Good morning, everyone. My name is Gerald. I've been a member here at Triangle Baptist now for several years, and I've also had a relationship with Triangle Baptist going back even further than that. I know that those people that know me, they're probably wondering why I'm up on the screen this morning. Well, let me share with you. I had been living and working in Houston for many years. I was married, had 3 children. We were attending a local church in the neighborhood, and that was our life. And one day, we had a chance to break away from Houston, and we came to visit my parents. And we had a wonderful visit with them, of course. But that Saturday night, my dad asked, "Why don't you come to church with us tomorrow morning?" And I thought that was a great invitation because I enjoy visiting different churches, with people. And so that morning we get up, he and I are ready. We're waiting on the women to get ready, waiting on the boys to get ready. And he starts talking. And this is a man of very few words. But he's telling me, he said, "Gerald, you're going to meet some of the finest people you'll ever want to meet in the world." He said, "These people, they love the Lord, they serve the Lord, they love one another, and they're going to love you too." So we go walking inside the sanctuary, and all of the chaos, all of the confusion and everything that we'd been dealing with that morning, the night before, the previous week, it was all gone. It was just very peaceful. It was tranquil, it was quiet, and I was speechless at that time. Didn't understand it, wasn't trying to, I just enjoyed the peace and quiet. Well, by now the members start walking over. The men are introducing themselves, shaking my hand, say, "Pleasure to meet you. Hope you enjoy the visit." And I was getting pats on the back. I didn't know who those were from. And by now the women they'd made their introductions, met the children and everything, and they come walking over. They introduce themselves, hug my neck, tell me how they knew my parents, how much they loved them. And I'm still somewhat speechless. And about the only thought I could form at that time was, this has got to be the neck-huggingest church I've ever been in, and that's okay. We enjoyed a wonderful sermon that morning, and it was over with, and now we're leaving, and the members are coming up again. They're thanking us, saying, "Pleasure to meet you. Hope you can come back as soon as possible. You're welcome here anytime." And that was the feeling that we left that day driving back into Houston. Woke up that next Monday morning, and that feeling was gone. And so that became our routine for the next 10 to 15 years. And, as though it was like I just woke up one morning, my kids, they're all 3 up, grown and gone. I'm divorced, and now I'm thinking I need to find a church over here in the Houston Pearland area, just like Triangle Baptist. And I visited churches for a while. I looked, but I couldn't find anything that came close. And it really wasn't a fair search because I was judging all the other churches by my first impression of Triangle Baptist, where I felt an immediate connection and I felt a closeness. So I eventually, just quit looking for churches in that area, and I was just going to survive off of the weekly, infrequent visits to and from. Anyway, we did that for a while, and as God would have it, my mother called one morning and asked if I was driving in that weekend. I said, "Of course I will." And she said, "Well, your dad has been ill," and he had been. He'd been experiencing several health issues, and so he just didn't feel safe driving anymore, so he was wanting to know if I would drive over and drive them to church. I said, "Absolutely, of course." And so I enjoyed the visit. I always do, that wonderful Triangle Baptist reception. And I'm driving back to Houston that night. And ladies, I will tell you this, if you ever ask your husband, your boyfriend, or your son what they're thinking about, and they say nothing, that is a valid and truthful answer. I was driving back to Houston that night, and my slate was completely clean. Not a thought in my mind. I was just enjoying the moment. And that's when, the good Lord spoke again. He said, "You need to make Triangle Baptist your home church." And I'm thinking, well, that's a wonderful idea because I was already going to be driving back and forth anyway. And so I did. From that point on, I started calling Triangle Baptist my home church. And that worked well for a while. Except, we were in the service, one Sunday, and towards the end of the sermon, the pastor had opened up, call for invitation. And a young couple, they walked forward. And I remember what they said to this day. They said, "We would like to officially join the church." that hit me like a ton of bricks. I had never joined the church. I don't know what it meant. I don't know what benefits came with that, but I knew it was something that I wanted to do. So that next Sunday, I answered the call for invitation. And I remember there was one lady there, she had tears in her eyes. She was that happy for me. It was very special. And it still is. And then the next Sunday, I sort of took it to the next level, so to speak. And that day was July the 22nd, 2012. And I was baptized that day. You know, I wish I could describe that feeling to you, but I can tell you I never felt so close to Christ. And that was a wonderful feeling. I'd never felt so close to Christ before in my life. And what I would ask is, if those of you who remember your baptism, I hope you still remember that feeling and that joy that you felt. And those of you that are not baptized, I pray that you will seriously consider it, because you will get more joy and it'll be more important to you than you can possibly imagine. And you can experience that joy for yourself. But July the 22nd of 2012 had a dual meaning for me. That day was exactly 13 days before my 60th birthday. You know, I used to say, you know, I may have been late to the party, but I got there eventually. But I don't say that anymore. I now say, it's just important to get there whenever you can. And, you know, I had to make that journey back and forth for another 3 or 4 years, and then I was able to retire. And I remember that last trip out of Houston, headed back to this area. You know, I remember thinking that the joy that I felt on Sundays when I was leaving, driving back to Houston, and I woke up and was not there on Monday morning, I just knew that that was going to be corrected. I knew that feeling was going to be there Monday morning. And I couldn't wait. I woke up that first Monday morning. Guess what? That joy wasn't there. And I didn't understand why. And I had to do some self-evaluation. And I was a Sunday morning member. You're driving in on Friday night, you know, leaving on Sunday afternoons. All I had was Sunday mornings. And I was thinking, you know, that, you know, 1 hour service ought to take me through the week, but it didn't. Well, I showed up for services one Sunday morning a little bit early. I was in the sanctuary by the time Brother Frank's faith class let out. These people came out of that class and they were excited, you know, and they were laughing, they were talking, they were spreading out through the sanctuary, they were greeting people, and they were just having fun. And I was standing in the area where I normally sit, and I guess I had a puzzled look on my face. Because Brother Frank up at the front, he shouted out to me, he said, "Brother, you need to be in there." Well, I stood a little bit taller, looked at him, smiled, nodded my head, gave the obligatory wave, and I sat down, because I didn't know how to process that. Well, the next Sunday was pretty much the same thing, except this time, these people came barreling out of that room like it was a high school pep rally and they were getting ready for the state championship. And I knew I couldn't be quiet any longer. I had to be me. So I turned around to Brother Frank and I shouted out to him, said, "What kind of a party do y'all have in there every Sunday morning?" And you know, without missing a beat and taking a breath, he replied, "You need to come see for yourself, brother. We're going to save you a chair for next week." Eventually, that became one of the more special invitations I had ever received. So that next Sunday, I was there, I showed up, and I walked into that classroom. Not really knowing what to expect, but I should have, because it was another wonderful triangle reception. We were actually studying the scriptures. You know, we were reading it, we were talking about it, dissecting the parables, interpreting them. And you know, reading the Bible just became more interesting, became more personal. So that next Monday morning, I woke up and that feeling was there, and that was exciting. Now it comes to Wednesday, and I'm thinking, if Monday morning was that powerful, what's the Wednesday night Bible study like? Well, I showed up for that. I remember walked in studying about the prophets of the Old Testament, and have a couple of takeaways. And that is, you know, what was missing on those Monday mornings that I was looking for was I just needed more of what church had to offer. I needed more of that church experience. I started learning that church was not an obligation, but it was a privilege, it was a blessing and an opportunity. And I'm looking forward to the day to where, one day we'll all get a chance to meet somebody, get a chance to invite them to church and tell them, you're going to meet some of the finest people you'll ever want to meet. These people love the Lord, they serve the Lord, they love one another, and they're going to love you too. Thank you.